Please take me home, sir. Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her. And, hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the story. It was a cold winter evening, and the snow had been falling steadily throughout the day. The kind of snow that blankets everything in white silence, making the world feel still and distant. Michael Anderson, the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company, was used to the busy hum of city life, the hustle of meetings, and the constant buzz of his phone. But tonight, he found himself walking alone, his thoughts as cold as the wind that sliced through his tailored coat. As he walked along the street, the lights from the nearby skyscrapers reflected off the snow, creating an almost ethereal glow. But despite the beauty of the scene, Michael couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that clung to him. His phone buzzed in his pocket again. Another holiday message from someone in the business world. The words on the screen were meaningless, just another reminder that he had everything, yet nothing at all. His thoughts wandered back to the empty penthouse he called home, the silence that echoed off the walls. He had everything he could want: wealth, status, power, but no one to share it with. He turned a corner, barely noticing the figures in the distance. But then, he saw her, a small figure, huddled against the side of a building. A little girl, no more than 7 or 8, sitting on the cold ground, her arms wrapped around herself as she shivered violently. Her clothes were soaked through, her shoes barely more than scraps. She looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes, and her voice barely reached him over the howling wind. "Please take me home, sir," she whispered, her words breaking through the cold air like a plea for help. Michael froze, the words echoing in his mind. Something about her, the fear in her eyes, the vulnerability in her voice, it was like a punch to his chest. He took a hesitant step forward, and the little girl flinched, wrapping her arms tighter around herself. "Please, don't leave me here," she whispered again, her teeth chattering from the cold. Michael's heart raced. He had always prided himself on being composed, on never letting emotions cloud his judgment. But in that moment, standing in front of this small, fragile child, all of his walls came crashing down. He couldn't just walk away. Not this time. Without thinking, he knelt down beside her, his knees hitting the cold ground, and gently wrapped his coat around her trembling shoulders. "You're safe now," he said softly, his voice almost shaking. "I'll help you." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You won't leave me?" she asked, her voice filled with a child's innocent hope. Michael swallowed hard, feeling something crack deep inside him. "No," he said firmly. "I won't leave you. Let's get you somewhere warm." He lifted her gently into his arms, carrying her through the snow, past the glowing city lights, to the warmth and safety of his car. As the door closed behind them, the world outside seemed to fade away. The only thing that mattered now was the child in his arms. The journey ahead would be long, but for the first time in years, Michael felt like he was finally doing something that mattered. "Please take me home, sir." Little girl shivered in snow. Then, a millionaire CEO found her. And, hello everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. Michael drove through the snow-covered streets, his eyes on the road, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The little girl, still in his arms, had fallen silent, her small body pressed against his side for warmth. He couldn't help but wonder what had brought her to the street in such a condition. Her clothes were tattered, her hair matted with wet snow, and her shoes barely enough to keep her feet from the bitter cold. But it wasn't just her physical state that troubled him, it was the look in her eyes. A look that spoke of fear and abandonment, of a life far too difficult for someone so young. As the city lights flickered past, Michael's mind raced. How could anyone let a child suffer like this? He had seen people like her before, the ones who fell through the cracks of society, the ones who were forgotten by the world. But this was different. This child was different. His heart ached as he looked down at her, her face pale and exhausted. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked gently, hoping to break the silence that had settled between them. The girl shifted slightly, looking up at him with those big, dark eyes that seemed to hold more sorrow than he could comprehend. "Ava," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the car's engine. "Ava," Michael repeated softly, his heart sinking. "How old are you, Ava?" She hesitated, then replied in a small, trembling voice. 7. Michael's chest tightened at the thought of such a young child being left alone in the cold, with no one to care for her, no one to protect her. He glanced at the rearview mirror, seeing the reflection of the city's towering buildings, their lights shining like cold, indifferent stars. Everything around him seemed so far removed from the little girl beside him, so disconnected from the reality she was living. He couldn't understand how someone could leave a child to fend for herself in a world so harsh. As they approached the hospital, Michael's grip on the steering wheel tightened. He was relieved to be taking Ava somewhere safe, but the question still lingered in his mind. How had she ended up like this? He pulled into the parking lot, and before the car even came to a complete stop, he was already out of his seat, rushing around to the passenger side to lift Ava into his arms once more. "We're going to get you help, okay?" he said, his voice steady but tinged with an emotion he couldn't quite place. Ava didn't respond, but she clung to him, her small hand grasping at his coat as if she were afraid he might let go. Michael carried her through the hospital doors, his heart pounding in his chest. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air, but it did little to calm his nerves. The reception desk was busy, with nurses and doctors rushing by. But when they saw him, carrying the tiny, trembling girl, they froze. A nurse rushed over, her eyes wide with concern. "Is she okay?" she asked, her voice filled with urgency. "She needs help," Michael said, his voice low and strained. "She's been outside in the cold. I don't know how long." The nurse nodded quickly and led them down a long hallway to a treatment room. Michael sat Ava down on the examination table, his hands shaking as he helped her onto the cold, sterile surface. "It's going to be okay," he reassured her, though he wasn't entirely sure if he believed his own words. Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness. "I just want to go home," she whispered, her voice breaking. Michael's heart shattered at the sound of her words. He wanted to give her that, to take her home and make everything better, but he knew he couldn't. Not yet. "We're going to figure it out, Ava," he said, his voice gentle. "We'll get you somewhere safe." As the nurse took Ava's vitals, Michael stood off to the side, feeling more helpless than he had in years. He had the resources, the power, the money to fix so many things, but none of that mattered here. Nothing could change the fact that this little girl had been abandoned, left to face the world alone. He thought back to his own childhood, to the memories of growing up without a father, raised by a mother who had done the best she could, but was often overwhelmed by the world. He had never been as alone as Ava, but he had known loneliness, had felt the cold distance between himself and the rest of the world. And now, here she was, a small, fragile child who had been forced to grow up too soon, too fast. The nurse finished her assessment and turned to Michael. "She's stable for now, but we'll need to keep her here for observation," she said. Michael nodded, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. At least she was safe now. At least she was warm. But as he looked down at Ava, still clinging to him with all the trust she could muster, he knew this was only the beginning. Her journey was far from over, and so was his. They would have to face whatever came next. Together. "Please take me home, sir." Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her and done. Hello, everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. The fluorescent lights of the hospital flickered softly, casting a pale glow on the sterile walls. Michael sat in the waiting area, his coat still damp from the snow, his hands clasped tightly together. He had done everything he could, but his mind refused to rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ava's small, trembling figure in the snow, her voice echoing in his head. "Please take me home, sir." It was a plea that pierced through his carefully built walls of logic and success. The doctor eventually emerged from the treatment room, her expression professional but kind. "She's doing better now," she said. "Mild hypothermia, a few bruises, some malnourishment, but nothing permanent. She'll recover physically." Michael nodded, feeling an unfamiliar tightness in his chest ease just slightly. "And emotionally?" he asked, hesitating as if he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. The doctor sighed softly. "That's harder to say. She's quiet, withdrawn. She doesn't talk about where she's from or what happened. She only said she didn't want to go back." Michael's heart sank. He had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made the reality heavier. "Can I see her?" The doctor nodded, gesturing toward the room. When Michael stepped inside, he was met with the soft sound of monitors and the faint rustle of blankets. Ava was awake, sitting up in bed, her eyes fixed on the small window that looked out onto the snowy parking lot. Her hospital gown looked far too big for her tiny frame, and her small hands clutched the edge of the blanket tightly. "Hey," Michael said softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned her head slowly, her dark eyes meeting his. For a moment, neither spoke. There was something fragile in her gaze, something that made Michael want to choose every word carefully. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Warmer," she whispered. Her voice was barely above a breath. "That's good," he said gently, taking a seat beside her bed. "The doctors said you're going to be fine." Ava nodded slowly, then looked away again, her eyes distant. "I thought, maybe you left," she murmured. Michael froze. The simplicity of her words hit him like a weight. "No," he said firmly. "I promised I wouldn't leave you, remember?" She blinked, as if trying to process his words, then whispered, "People say that a lot." Michael swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. He could hear the faint hum of the machines, the distant footsteps in the hallway. But in that moment, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. "Ava," he said softly, Where's your mom? Her hands tightened around the blanket. She's sick, she said finally. She couldn't get up for a long time. Then one day she said she had to go somewhere, but she never came back. Michael felt a hollow ache in his chest. Do you have anyone else? Family? Friends? She shook her head slowly. Just Mommy, she whispered. She always said not to talk to strangers. But you stopped when I asked. Her voice broke slightly on the last word, and Michael felt his throat tighten. He wanted to say something comforting, something that would make it all better, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small packet of cocoa mix he had grabbed earlier from the hospital cafeteria. You ever had hot cocoa before? She looked at the packet curiously, then shook her head. It's like a hug, he said with a small smile, a warm one that you can drink. That earned him the tiniest flicker of a smile from her, and in that small, fleeting moment, the sterile hospital room felt a little less cold. The nurse brought a cup of warm cocoa a few minutes later, and Ava sipped it carefully, her eyes closing for a second, as if the warmth itself was a miracle. Watching her, Michael felt something shift inside him, something he hadn't felt in years, a quiet sense of purpose. Ava, he said softly after a while, we'll make sure you have somewhere safe to stay. I promise. She looked up at him again, and this time, her eyes seemed to hold a spark of trust. You promise? She asked. I promise, he said, his voice steady, as he sat beside her, listening to the faint sound of the snow tapping against the window. Michael realized that this night had changed everything. He had spent years surrounded by success, by luxury and silence, but none of it had ever made him feel what he felt now. This strange, aching mix of fear, compassion, and hope. For the first time, in as long as he could remember, he didn't feel alone. And for the first time, he understood what it truly meant to stop, to listen, and to care. Please take me home, sir. Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her and... Hello, everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings that Michael couldn't quite focus on. His mind was always drifting back to Ava. He had made promises to her, promises to protect her, but each day he spent in the office felt like he was failing. He wasn't used to feeling helpless, but with her, everything was different. The truth of her situation weighed heavily on him. The authorities had found no trace of her mother. No family members had come forward, and the few people they had questioned about her had no answers. Ava had been abandoned, alone, without anyone to protect her. That was when Michael decided it was time to take matters into his own hands. He had the means, the resources, and the will. He couldn't leave Ava to the system, not after everything she had been through. The thought of her alone in a foster home, bouncing from one place to another, was unbearable. He needed to do more. After much deliberation, Michael made the decision to become Ava's legal guardian. It wasn't an easy process, but with his wealth and influence, the legal hurdles were cleared faster than he expected. Soon enough, Ava was living with him in his penthouse. And despite the initial awkwardness, Michael began to feel a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. It wasn't just about giving her a safe place to live, it was about giving her stability, a chance to heal, a chance to feel like a child again. But despite the luxury of his home, Ava remained distant, her eyes always holding a shadow that Michael couldn't reach. She rarely spoke about her past, and when she did, it was in hushed tones, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael didn't press her. He knew healing took time, and he was willing to wait. It wasn't until one evening, as they were sitting together in the living room, that the truth began to surface. Michael had been reading the newspaper when he noticed Ava, sitting on the couch across from him, her eyes fixed on the picture of a family in an advertisement. He watched her for a moment, sensing that something was about to change. Then, she spoke softly, almost as if she were talking to herself. "I used to have a family," she said, her voice trembling. Michael set the newspaper down and looked at her, his heart racing. "What do you mean, Ava?" he asked gently. She didn't look at him. Instead, she stared at the picture, her small hands clenched in her lap. "Mommy used to say we were a family, that nothing could ever tear us apart. But—" She stopped, biting her lip, as if trying to hold back tears. Michael could see the conflict in her eyes, the pain she was trying to bury. He reached across the space between them, placing a hand gently on hers. "Ava," he said softly, "you are still part of a family. You have me now, and I'll never let you go." She turned her gaze to him then, her eyes wide and filled with an emotion Michael could barely understand. "But I don't remember what it feels like to be loved," she whispered, her voice breaking. Michael's heart shattered. He didn't know how to make her feel loved, truly loved, but he promised himself that he would try. That night, as he tucked her into bed, he kissed her forehead and whispered, "You are loved, Ava. You are safe, and you are not alone." The next few weeks were filled with moments of quiet connection. Michael started taking Ava to therapy, hoping that a professional could help her work through the trauma she had endured. But slowly, he noticed small changes in her. She started smiling again, even if it was just a little. She began to ask questions about his life, his work, and his childhood. And for the first time since bringing her into his life, Michael felt like he was finally reaching her. One evening, as they were sitting at the dinner table, Ava spoke up again. "When I grow up," she said softly, "I want to help people like you helped me." Michael was stunned. He had been so focused on giving her a chance at a better life that he hadn't thought about how much she had already learned from him. "Ava, you're already helping," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've helped me, more than you'll ever know." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Michael allowed himself to believe that, perhaps, just perhaps, he wasn't as broken as he had once thought. Maybe, with Ava, he could find the redemption he had been searching for all these years. "Please take me home, sir." Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her. And, hello everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. It had been several weeks since Michael brought Ava into his home, and though the initial coldness had faded, a quiet tension remained between them. Ava was adjusting, but the emotional scars she carried were still deeply ingrained. Michael had tried everything he could think of to make her feel welcome: movie nights, cooking her favorite meals, and even buying her new clothes. But no matter what he did, there were still moments when she seemed to retreat into herself, her eyes distant and her mind elsewhere. One afternoon, As Michael was sitting at his desk working, he heard the sound of soft footsteps approaching. He looked up and saw Ava standing in the doorway of his office, her small frame silhouetted against the hallway light. "Can I talk to you?" she asked quietly. Michael smiled gently, pushing his chair back. "Of course, Ava, come on in." She stepped inside, hesitating for a moment, before sitting down in the chair opposite his. There was a moment of silence before she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't like being in the house alone," she said, her eyes on the floor. Michael felt a pang in his chest. He had been so focused on making sure Ava was physically safe that he hadn't realized the depth of her emotional need. "I'm sorry, Ava," he said softly. "I didn't know you felt that way." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of vulnerability and fear. "It's just, when I'm by myself, I remember things I don't want to remember." Her voice broke on the last words, and Michael felt his heart shatter. Without thinking, he stood up and walked over to her, kneeling down beside the chair. He placed his hand on her shoulder gently. "Ava," he said softly, "you don't have to be alone anymore. You have me, and I'm not going anywhere. I'll always be here." She looked at him then, her small hand reaching out to grasp his. "Promise?" she asked, her voice full of the innocence and hope that only a child could carry. Michael felt a lump form in his throat as he nodded. "I promise," he said, his voice firm. The days that followed were filled with small victories. Ava started to sleep through the night more often, though there were still moments when she would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, calling out for her mother. Michael would always be there to comfort her, holding her until she fell back to sleep. He spent more time with her, taking her out on walks, teaching her to ride a bike, and even showing her how to make the best hot chocolate. Slowly, but surely, Ava began to open up more. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, she finally began to speak more about her past. She told Michael about her mother, about how they used to live in a small apartment, and how her mother would always try to make her laugh even when things were tough. "She always said she loved me," Ava said quietly, her voice full of both sadness and love. "But I think she was scared too. She was always so tired." Michael listened intently, his heart aching for the little girl who had lost so much. "What happened, Ava?" he asked softly, not wanting to push her, but knowing she needed to share her story. "She got sick," Ava whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't know what it was, but she would always tell me everything would be okay. And then one day, she just didn't wake up." Michael swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling in his chest. "I'm so sorry, Ava," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But you don't have to carry this alone anymore. You have me, and we'll get through this together." She looked at him then, a small spark of trust in her eyes. For the first time, Michael could see that she believed him. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, Ava's emotional wounds began to heal. She smiled more often, her laughter filling the house in a way that Michael hadn't realized he had been missing. But even as she began to heal, Michael knew there was more to do. He still hadn't found out everything about her past, and he was determined to give her the answers she deserved. One day, after a therapy session, Michael decided it was time to visit the orphanage where Ava had spent some time after her mother's passing. He knew it wasn't going to be easy, but he needed to find out more about what had happened to her, to help her move forward. He had promised her safety, but now he was determined to promise her peace. As they arrived at the orphanage, Ava seemed nervous, clutching Michael's hand tightly. He squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It's okay, Ava," he said gently. "We're just here to learn more about your past so we can help you heal." As they entered the building, Michael was struck by how cold and sterile it felt. It was nothing like the warm home he had tried to create for her. He knew then, more than ever, that he was fighting for her future. And for the first time in years, Michael felt like he was finally doing something that truly mattered. "Please take me home, sir." Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her. And, hello everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. After the visit to the orphanage, Michael felt both relieved and heartbroken. The orphanage director had given them a few more details about Ava's time there, but much of her early life still remained a mystery. The more he learned, the more he understood the deep scars Ava carried. Her mother's death, the neglect she had faced, and the fear of abandonment had all shaped her. And Michael knew that his promise to protect her now weighed heavily on both of them. But despite the pain in her past, Ava had begun to show signs of healing. She was speaking more openly, sharing stories of her mother and the memories she had of her childhood before everything fell apart. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One evening, as they sat together at dinner, Ava suddenly looked up from her plate, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think I'll ever be normal again?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael's heart tightened at the question. He knew that, deep down, Ava was struggling with feelings of guilt, as though she were broken and beyond repair. He set down his fork and reached across the table, gently taking her hand. "Ava," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion, "you're already more normal than you think. You're not broken. You've just been through a lot, and that's okay. Healing takes time, and it's not always easy. But I promise you, you don't have to do it alone." She met his gaze, her eyes searching his face for the truth in his words. Slowly, a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "I'm not alone," she said, almost to herself. "No," Michael replied softly. "You're not." As the weeks went by, the bond between them continued to grow stronger. Michael found himself doing things he had never imagined, taking time off from his work to spend entire afternoons at the park with Ava, showing her how to ride a bike, and even learning how to bake cookies together. The moments they shared were simple, but they brought a sense of peace and happiness that Michael hadn't known in years. But despite all the progress they had made, Michael knew there was still much more to be done. Ava still had moments of fear, moments where she would freeze or pull away when something reminded her of her past. Michael could see the battle in her eyes, the fight to trust again. And every time that happened, he reminded her that he was there. But the real test came one day when Michael received a call from the police. They had found something that would finally give them answers about Ava's mother. The authorities had tracked down a relative, someone who had been in contact with Ava's mother before her passing. It was a distant aunt who had once offered to take Ava in, but the offer was never followed through. Michael's heart raced as he drove to the station to meet the officer. When he arrived, the officer explained that the aunt had expressed interest in meeting Ava, though Michael was wary. He wasn't sure what this relative's intentions were, or whether Ava would even want to see her. The officer gave Michael the information, and he decided to talk to Ava before making any decisions. That evening, he sat down with her in the living room, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what was about to unfold. "Ava," he began gently, "I got a call today. The police have found someone who knew your mom. It's an aunt, and she wants to meet you." Ava looked at him, her expression unreadable. An aunt? She repeated, her voice quiet. I didn't know I had one. Michael nodded, his hand resting gently on hers. I know this might be overwhelming, but I think it's important that you know. You have a right to meet her if you want to. Ava sat in silence for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the floor. Finally, she looked up at Michael, her eyes filled with uncertainty. What if she doesn't like me? What if she wants to send me away? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael felt a sharp pain in his chest at the thought of Ava fearing abandonment once again. He leaned forward, cupping her face in his hands gently. Ava, he said softly, no one is ever going to send you away again. You're my family now, and no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. Ava nodded slowly, her small hand tightening around his. I'm scared, she admitted. Michael smiled warmly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I know you're scared, but you don't have to face it alone. I'm right here. The next day, Michael took Ava to meet her aunt. The meeting was awkward at first, but as they sat together in the small, quiet room, Ava's aunt shared stories about her mother, memories of when they were both young, and the life they had shared before everything had fallen apart. Ava listened quietly, her eyes wide, as she took in the information. For the first time, she felt a connection to the past, to the woman her mother had once been. And though the meeting didn't erase the pain of losing her, it gave Ava a sense of closure, a feeling that she wasn't as alone as she had once believed. When they left, Michael could see the weight had lifted slightly from Ava's shoulders. As they drove home, she looked out the window at the passing streets, a quiet smile on her lips. Thank you, she said softly, her voice full of sincerity. For everything. Michael smiled, his heart swelling with pride. You're welcome, Ava. You've come so far, and I'm proud of you. We've got a long way to go, but we'll do it together. Please take me home, sir. Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her and... Hello, everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. Weeks passed, and Ava's adjustment to her new life with Michael seemed to be progressing, though not without challenges. She was still quiet at times, withdrawn, but there were moments when she would open up, laughing at something silly, or asking questions about things she had never learned before. It was those small victories that gave Michael hope. He had made a promise to her, a promise to show her a life that was safe, a life that was filled with care and love. But even as Ava slowly found her way back to herself, Michael found himself facing a challenge of his own. He had grown to care for her deeply, in a way that felt both unfamiliar and undeniable. She had become his responsibility, and he had come to see her as more than just the little girl he had saved from the streets. She had become his family, and that realization was both comforting and terrifying. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Ava turned to him, her face serious. Michael, she said quietly, do you think I'll ever really fit in here? Michael looked at her, his heart aching as he saw the uncertainty in her eyes. He knew she was still struggling with the feeling of being an outsider in his world, a world so different from the one she had come from. He set his book down and gave her his full attention. Ava, you're already a part of this family, he said gently. I know it's hard. It's going to take time for you to feel at home, but you belong here. You don't ever have to feel like you don't. Ava looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together nervously. I know you say that, but it feels like I'm just here, like I'm not really part of anything. Michael's heart sank. He could see how much she was hurting, how desperately she wanted to feel like she belonged somewhere, anywhere. I understand, he said softly, but you are part of something now. You're part of my life. You've been part of my life since the moment I found you in the snow. Ava's eyes met his then, her expression softening as she processed his words. I'm not going anywhere, Michael continued. I'm not going to give up on you, Ava. And I'm not going to let you give up on yourself either. There was a long pause before Ava spoke again. What if I mess things up? She asked quietly. What if I can't be the daughter you want me to be? Michael reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder, giving her a reassuring squeeze. Ava, there's no such thing as a perfect daughter or a perfect parent. What matters is that we're here for each other. And no matter what happens, I'll be here. She nodded slowly, still unsure. But for the first time, Michael could see the walls she had built around herself begin to crack, ever so slightly. Over the next few days, Michael noticed a subtle shift in Ava. She started to take more initiative, offering to help with small tasks around the house, like setting the table or folding laundry. She even started picking out her own clothes, something she hadn't done before. It was small, but it was a sign that she was beginning to feel more comfortable in her new life. But just as things seemed to be improving, something happened that threatened to undo all the progress they had made. One afternoon, as Michael was working from home, he received a call from the school that Ava had been attending for the past few weeks. Mr. Anderson, I'm afraid we need to discuss something regarding Ava, the principal's voice said, sounding concerned. Michael's heart skipped a beat. What's wrong? He asked, his voice tense. It's nothing serious, the principal replied quickly. But there's been an incident. Ava had an altercation with another student during lunch. We think it may be related to some underlying issues she's been dealing with. Michael felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. He had known that Ava was struggling emotionally, but he hadn't expected this. Is she okay? He asked. She's fine, the principal assured him. But we'd like to discuss this further. Would you be able to come in for a meeting? Michael agreed immediately, his mind racing with worry. As he drove to the school, he couldn't help but wonder what had triggered Ava's outburst. Had she been feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or rejected? He had been so focused on giving her a sense of stability, but had he overlooked something more deeply troubling? When Michael arrived at the school, he was led to the principal's office, where Ava was sitting quietly in a chair, her hands folded in her lap. She looked up when he entered, and her eyes immediately dropped to the floor. The principal explained what had happened. Ava had been teased by another student about her old clothes, and in the heat of the moment, she had pushed the other child. Michael turned to Ava, his heart breaking when he saw the guilt on her face. Ava, I know it's hard sometimes, he said gently, but you don't have to fight back when someone is mean. You're not alone anymore. You don't have to carry all of this by yourself. Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. I just wanted to make them stop, she whispered. I just wanted to feel like I fit in. Michael knelt down beside her, gently wiping away her tears. I know, sweetheart. And you do fit in. You belong here. With me. With this family. Ava nodded slowly, her tears subsiding. The principal gave Michael some advice on how to help Ava with her anger and emotions, and they agreed to meet again in a few weeks. As they left the school, Michael wrapped his arm around Ava, pulling her close. You did nothing wrong, he said softly. It's okay to feel upset sometimes. What matters is that you don't have to handle it alone. For the first time in a long time, Ava smiled, A small, but genuine smile. Michael knew that they were going to be okay, that they were both healing, step by step. Please take me home, sir. Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her and, hello everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. As the days went by, Ava's behavior began to shift in subtle but significant ways. She was no longer the shy, withdrawn child who had first arrived at Michael's home. While she still had moments of fear, especially when it came to trust, she was slowly learning to embrace the love and stability that Michael had promised her. And more than anything, Michael could see the change in her eyes. The emptiness that once haunted them was beginning to fade, replaced by a spark of hope, a glimmer of joy. It was during one of these moments of quiet change that Michael began to notice something different about Ava. He had spent weeks trying to show her that she was safe, that she was part of his family now, but it was clear to him that something deeper had begun to shift within her. One afternoon, after school, Ava walked into the living room with a small, tentative smile on her face. She looked at Michael, who was sitting on the couch, his attention still focused on his work. "Michael," she said softly, "can we talk?" Michael put down his laptop and turned to face her. There was a seriousness in her expression that he hadn't seen before. "Of course," he said, gesturing for her to sit beside him. Ava took a deep breath and sat down, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened before, about my mom and everything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael's heart skipped a beat. This was the conversation he had been hoping for, but had been too afraid to push her into. He kept his tone gentle. "It's okay, Ava. You can talk to me about anything. I'm here for you." She nodded slowly, looking down at her hands as if searching for the right words. I remember the last time I saw her," Ava said, her voice trembling. "She told me she'd be back soon, but she didn't come back. I waited for a long time, and then," her voice broke, and she paused, trying to steady herself. Michael could see the pain in her eyes, the unresolved grief that still clung to her. He reached out, gently placing his hand on hers. "I'm so sorry, Ava," he whispered. "I know it's hard, but I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere." Ava wiped at her eyes and looked up at him, her expression uncertain. "I don't know if I'll ever stop missing her," she said quietly. "I don't know if I can forget what happened." Michael nodded, his heart aching for her. "You don't have to forget, Ava," he said softly. "You're allowed to miss her, to grieve, but you don't have to carry that pain alone anymore." Ava was silent for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I know," she whispered, her voice gaining a little more strength. I just want to feel like I'm part of something, like I belong." Michael felt a wave of emotion wash over him as he heard those words. He realized then just how much Ava was still struggling with the feeling of not belonging, with the fear that she wasn't enough, that she didn't deserve the love she was being given. "You belong here, Ava," he said firmly, squeezing her hand. "You've always belonged here. I know it's been hard, but we're building something together, a family, and you're a part of that." Ava looked at him, her eyes searching his face for the truth in his words. And in that moment, Michael saw the first real glimmer of hope in her eyes. It was as if she was starting to believe him. "You mean it?" she asked softly. "I do," Michael said with a quiet certainty. "You are my family, Ava, and you always will be." There was a long pause before Ava spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to try," she said. "I want to try to be part of this family." Michael's heart swelled with pride as he heard her words. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic change, but it was enough. Ava was starting to let go of the walls she had built around herself, starting to trust in the love and security he had promised her. "You don't have to try too hard," Michael said softly. "Just be yourself. That's all I've ever wanted." Ava gave him a small smile, and for the first time, in a long time, Michael felt a sense of peace. They were both still healing, both still learning how to trust and love again, but they were doing it together, and that was enough. The following days were filled with small steps forward. Ava began to talk more openly, sharing stories of her past and her memories of her mother. She still had moments of sadness, moments when the grief seemed too much to bear. But Michael was there to comfort her, to remind her that she was not alone. And with every passing day, he saw more and more of the child she had once been, the laughter, the curiosity, the spark of life that had been buried beneath the weight of her past. Michael knew that there was still work to be done, still challenges to face, but he also knew that they had come a long way. They were no longer just two strangers brought together by circumstance. They were family, and that was all that mattered. "Please, take me home, sir," little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her, and, "Hello everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. It had been months since Ava first came to live with Michael, and though the journey had been filled with ups and downs, they had made more progress than Michael could have hoped for. Ava was still adjusting to the idea of family, but she was beginning to understand what it meant to truly belong. They had their moments. Of course, moments of doubt, fear, and sadness. But they also had moments of joy, laughter, and even hope. One evening, as Michael was making dinner, Ava came into the kitchen, looking more at ease than he had seen her in a long time. "Can I help?" she asked shyly, standing in the doorway. Michael turned to her, a smile forming on his face. "Of course, sweetheart. I could use all the help I can get." Ava's eyes brightened, and she moved to the counter where he had been chopping vegetables. She watched for a moment before picking up a carrot and beginning to peel it carefully, as if it was the most important task in the world. Michael couldn't help but watch her, noticing how much more confident she seemed in her actions. She had started taking an interest in the small things, cooking, organizing her room, even drawing in her sketchbook. These were the moments Michael had longed for when he first made the decision to bring her into his life. As the evening wore on, they ate together in the living room, enjoying the simple comfort of a quiet meal. For a while, the house was filled only with the sounds of eating and occasional laughter. After dinner, they settled into the couch together, Ava curling up with her blanket while Michael flipped through a photo album. Ava looked over at him, her curiosity piqued by the pictures of his childhood. "Who are these people?" she asked, pointing to a picture of a family gathering. Michael paused, looking at the photo. His parents, his younger sister, and him, so many memories, both good and bad. "That's my family," Michael said, his voice softer than usual. "They were the ones who taught me what it meant to be loved." Ava tilted her head, her eyes studying the photo. "I didn't have a family like that," she said quietly, her voice tinged with sadness. Michael's heart ached, but he knew this was an important moment. You do now, he said gently, looking at her. You've always had a family, and I'll be here, every step of the way, no matter what. Ava's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, Michael saw something flicker there, something he hadn't seen before. Hope. Ava gave a small, hesitant smile. I think I'm starting to believe that, she said softly. The next morning, Michael woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside his window. The sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting a warm glow across the room. He got up, ready to start his day. But when he walked into the living room, he stopped in his tracks. Ava was standing by the window, her arms crossed in front of her, as she gazed out at the view. Ava? He asked gently, not wanting to startle her. She turned around, her face serious. I've been thinking, she said, her voice more certain than it had been in the past. I think I want to go back to school. I want to try and be like everyone else. Michael's heart swelled with pride. She had come so far, and the fact that she wanted to try to return to a sense of normalcy was a huge step forward. I think that's a great idea, Ava, he said, moving closer to her. We can figure it out together. Ava looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude. I don't want to mess things up, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. Michael took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. You won't mess anything up, he said softly. We'll take it one step at a time. No matter what, I'm with you. The next week, Michael met with the school counselor and arranged for Ava to rejoin her classes. It wasn't easy, but Ava was determined. The first day back at school was nerve-wracking for her. Michael drove her to school early in the morning, his stomach tied in knots. As they arrived, he looked over at Ava, who was sitting quietly in the passenger seat. Are you ready? He asked softly. Ava nodded, though he could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I'm nervous, she admitted. Michael smiled reassuringly. That's okay. You don't have to be perfect. Just take it one moment at a time, and remember that you have people who care about you. As they walked into the school, Ava clung to his side, but when they reached the entrance, she straightened up, taking a deep breath. I think I can do this, she said, her voice more confident than it had been before. Michael watched her walk into the school, her back straight, her head held high. A small part of him wanted to hold on and protect her forever. But he knew that this was her journey, not his. She was learning to stand on her own 2 feet, to face the world. And he couldn't have been prouder. Later that day, when Ava returned home, her face was flushed with excitement. It wasn't so bad, she said, her smile wide. I even made a new friend. Michael couldn't help but grin. I knew you could do it, he said, his heart swelling with pride. As they sat together that evening, talking about her day, Michael realized something profound. Ava wasn't just healing. She was growing. She was becoming her own person, and he was lucky to be there to witness it. They were both still on their journey, still learning and growing. But for the first time in a long time, Michael felt like they were exactly where they needed to be. Please take me home, sir. Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her. And, hello everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. It had been several months since Ava had come to live with Michael, and he had watched, with a mix of pride and sadness, as she transformed. The shy, frightened little girl who had once clung to him like a lifeline was now beginning to embrace her new life. She was still quiet at times, still haunted by the ghosts of her past. But she had come a long way. She was starting to trust again. Michael had worked tirelessly to provide Ava with a life filled with safety and love. But he knew that there was still so much more she needed to heal. And as much as he had hoped to shield her from her past, the truth was, some things couldn't be ignored forever. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Ava spoke up again. Her voice was quieter than usual, and Michael could tell that something was weighing heavily on her mind. "Michael," she began softly, "I've been thinking." Michael looked up from his book, his attention immediately focused on her. He put the book down and gave her his full attention. "What's on your mind?" he asked gently. Ava paused for a moment, her fingers nervously twisting the edge of her sleeve. "I don't think I ever really told you everything about my mom. Not the way I remember it," she said, her voice wavering. Michael felt his heart tighten at her words. He had known that Ava carried a deep sadness inside her, but he hadn't realized how much she had been holding back. "It's okay, Ava," he said softly. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to. But if you want to talk, I'm here." Ava looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to decide whether or not she could trust him with her memories. Finally, she took a deep breath and began. "I remember the days before everything changed," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We lived in a little apartment. I don't think it was much, but it was home. And even when things were hard, Mom always tried to make it feel okay. She used to make me hot chocolate when I was cold, and we would sit together and talk. I remember laughing with her, even when I didn't understand everything. It felt safe." Michael listened intently, his heart aching as he imagined the warmth that had once been in Ava's life. He knew that the memories she was sharing were both precious and painful, and he wanted to hold on to every word she said. "But then she got sick," Ava continued, her voice growing quieter. "I didn't know what it was at first. She would just be tired all the time, but she kept telling me everything would be fine. But one day, she couldn't get out of bed. And after that, it was like everything started falling apart. She was in the hospital a lot, and I was always alone. And then, one day, she said she was going to come back, but she never did." Ava's voice cracked on the last words, and Michael could see the pain in her eyes. His heart broke for her as she relived the grief of losing her mother. He reached out and placed his hand on hers, offering the comfort of his presence. "I'm so sorry, Ava," he said softly. "I can't imagine how hard that must have been for you." She nodded, wiping away a tear that had fallen down her cheek. "I didn't know how to deal with it," she admitted. "I still don't know how. I kept hoping she would come back, that it was all just a mistake, but she never did." Michael didn't know what to say to ease her pain, but he knew one thing for certain. Ava needed to know that she wasn't alone anymore. "Ava," he said gently, "you're not alone. You have me, and I will always be here for you, no matter what." Ava looked at him, her eyes full of doubt. "But I've lost so much," she whispered. "How do I ever stop feeling like I'm broken?" Michael squeezed her hand. "You're not broken, Ava," he said softly. "You've been through more than anyone should ever have to. But that doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you're stronger than you think." Ava looked down at their hands, her fingers curling around his. "I don't know if I'll ever stop missing her," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. Michael nodded, understanding the depth of her grief. "You don't have to forget her, Ava," he said gently. "You can carry her in your heart, but you don't have to let the pain control you." You're allowed to feel sad, but you're also allowed to heal, and I'll help you do that." Ava didn't answer at first, but after a long moment, she looked up at him, her eyes filled with something Michael hadn't seen in a while: hope. I think I want to try," she said softly, her voice filled with uncertainty, but also a glimmer of something else. Michael smiled warmly. "You don't have to try to be perfect, Ava. You just have to be you, and I'll be right here with you, every step of the way." Over the following days, Ava continued to open up, sharing more about her past and the feelings she had buried deep inside. And while the process wasn't easy, Michael saw a change in her, a shift from grief to healing, from fear to acceptance. She was still Ava, the same girl he had found shivering in the snow months ago, but now she was stronger. She had found a small piece of peace within herself, and Michael knew that it was just the beginning of the journey ahead. Together, they were rebuilding something beautiful, a new chapter in both of their lives, one that was filled with the promise of love, trust, and the chance for a fresh start. "Please take me home, sir." Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her. And, "Hello, everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. As the weeks turned into months, Ava's life seemed to stabilize in ways that Michael hadn't imagined possible when he first took her in. She had gone from a frightened, uncertain little girl to a young girl finding her way in the world. Her trust in Michael had grown, and with that trust came a newfound confidence in herself. But even with all the progress, the weight of Ava's past still lingered. It wasn't always visible, but there were moments when she would retreat into herself, when the ghosts of the past would come back to haunt her. One particular evening, Michael noticed that Ava was unusually quiet. It was the first time in a while that she hadn't come to join him for their usual dinner in the living room. After finishing his meal, Michael made his way upstairs to her room, his heart heavy with concern. When he knocked gently on her door, he heard a soft, hesitant voice say, "Come in." Michael opened the door slowly, stepping inside. Ava was sitting at the window, her back to him, staring out at the view of the city below. "Hey, kiddo," Michael said softly, his voice warm with affection. "Everything okay?" Ava didn't respond immediately. Instead, she continued staring out the window, lost in thought. Michael stepped closer and sat on the edge of the bed. "You've been quiet tonight. Want to talk about it?" Ava shifted slightly, but didn't turn around. Finally, after a long pause, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was just thinking about my mom," she said. "About how things used to be, before everything changed." Michael's heart ached for her, but he knew this was part of her healing process, the need to confront the past. "It's okay to think about her, Ava," he said gently. "She was a big part of your life, and you'll always carry that part of her with you." Ava nodded slowly, but there was a sadness in her eyes that Michael couldn't ignore. "I don't know if I'll ever really get over it," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't know if I'll ever stop missing her." Michael's heart went out to her, but he didn't know how to make the pain go away. He knew that grief was something Ava would have to carry in her own time, at her own pace. He could be there for her, offer comfort, but he couldn't take away the ache that lived inside her. "You don't have to get over it, Ava," he said softly, his voice steady. "And you don't have to stop missing her. It's okay to feel that way. What matters is that you're not alone." You've got me. Ava turned slightly to look at him then, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. I'm scared, Michael, she said quietly. I'm scared that I'll never really be happy, that I'll always feel like there's something missing. Michael's chest tightened at her words. He had always promised her that she would find happiness again, but he couldn't promise that the pain of losing her mother would ever fully go away. Ava, he said softly, I know it's hard, but happiness isn't something that happens all at once. It's something we find in the small moments, in the things that make us feel safe and loved. And you are loved, Ava. You always have been, and you always will be. There was a long pause as Ava processed his words. Finally, she let out a small sigh and looked up at him, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. I guess that's true, she said, her voice a little stronger than before. I am loved. Michael smiled, relieved to see that glimmer of hope in her eyes once again. You are, he said, reaching out and gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. And I'll always be here to remind you of that. Ava nodded, and for the first time that evening, the weight on her shoulders seemed to lift, even if only a little. She was still a young girl, still learning how to navigate a world that had hurt her. But she was no longer alone in her journey. Michael's presence, his unwavering support, was the anchor she had needed. Over the next few days, Ava continued to show signs of growth. She was more open with her feelings, more willing to talk about her past and her fears. She still had moments when she felt lost, but they became less frequent. And when those moments did come, she knew she could turn to Michael. They had learned to communicate in a way that was both healing and honest. And it was that connection that was slowly helping her to heal. One Saturday afternoon, Michael decided to take Ava out for a special outing. He could see that she had been feeling a little cooped up, and he wanted to remind her of the joy that still existed in the world. They spent the afternoon at a local park, walking along the trails and sitting on a bench overlooking a lake. The sun was warm, and the sound of birds singing filled the air. Ava was more relaxed than Michael had seen her in a long time. She smiled, laughed, and even played with the ducks near the water. As they sat on the bench together, Michael looked at her, a sense of peace filling his heart. You're doing great, Ava, he said, his voice full of pride. Ava looked up at him and smiled, her eyes sparkling. Thanks, Michael, she said softly. I think I'm starting to believe that too. And in that moment, Michael knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Ava was healing, growing, and finding her way back to happiness. And Michael was there for every step of the journey. He had given her the gift of love, and in return, she had given him a family, something he never thought he would have again. Please take me home, sir. Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her. And, hello everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. AMR. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. Over the course of the next few months, Michael watched as Ava began to transform in front of his eyes. The quiet, broken little girl he had first brought into his home was slowly becoming a young girl filled with a quiet confidence. She still had moments of fear, moments when her past would come rushing back to her, but they were fewer and farther between. One evening, after dinner, Michael found Ava sitting at the dining table, a notebook in front of her. Her pencil was moving across the page quickly, her brow furrowed in concentration. She didn't look up as he entered the room, but he could see how deeply focused she was. "What are you working on?" he asked, his voice gentle. Ava looked up at him. Her face flushed slightly. "It's just something I'm writing," she said, pushing the notebook aside. "It's nothing special." Michael smiled, sitting down across from her. "I bet it's something special," he said softly. Ava hesitated, then pushed the notebook toward him. "I wrote a letter," she said, her voice quiet. "To my mom." Michael's heart skipped a beat. He had known that Ava still carried a deep sadness for the mother she had lost, but he didn't know how much she had been holding inside. "You want to show it to me?" he asked gently. Ava nodded, her fingers trembling slightly as she handed him the letter. Michael took it, his heart aching as he began to read. It was simple, but it was filled with emotion. Ava had written about the memories of her mother, about the love they had shared, and about how much she missed her. But there was also something else in the letter, something that Michael had not expected. Ava had written about how she was learning to heal, how she was beginning to feel like she could move forward, even without her mother by her side. Michael finished reading the letter and looked up at Ava, his eyes filled with pride. "Ava," he said softly, "this is beautiful. You're so strong." Ava looked down at the table, her hands clasped tightly together. "I don't feel strong," she whispered. "I just want her to come back. I don't know if I'll ever be okay without her." Michael reached across the table, placing his hand gently over hers. "It's okay to miss her, Ava," he said softly. "You don't have to be okay all the time. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. And you don't have to face this alone anymore." Ava met his gaze then, her eyes full of uncertainty. "Do you really mean that?" she asked, her voice small. Michael smiled, his heart swelling with affection. "I do, sweetheart. I'm here for you, no matter what. We're in this together." Over the next few weeks, Ava continued to write in her notebook. Sometimes it was about her mother. Sometimes it was about her new life with Michael. And sometimes it was just about her hopes and dreams for the future. Writing had become her way of processing the emotions she had kept buried for so long. One afternoon, as Michael was going through some old files in his office, he came across something unexpected, an old letter. It was from a lawyer, addressed to Ava. The letter was about the legal proceedings regarding her mother's estate. Michael's heart sank as he read through the letter. Ava's mother had left behind some assets, but the estate was tied up in legal complications. Michael knew this was something Ava would eventually need to face, but he wasn't sure how to approach it. That evening, as they sat together in the living room, Michael decided it was time to have the conversation. "Ava," he began gently, "there's something I need to talk to you about. It's about your mom's estate." Ava looked up at him, her brow furrowing. "What about it?" she asked. Michael took a deep breath. "There are some legal things we need to work through, but I promise you, we'll handle it together. You don't have to worry about it right now." Ava nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I don't really know what to do about all that stuff," she said quietly. "I don't want to think about it. I just want to feel normal." Michael's heart ached for her. "I understand, Ava," he said softly. "And you don't have to deal with any of it alone. We'll take it one step at a time, whenever you're ready." For a moment, there was silence between them, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. But then, Ava looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Michael smiled warmly, his heart full. "You don't have to thank me, Ava," he said softly. "You're my family, and I'll always be here for you, no matter what." Over the next few months, Michael and Ava worked through the details of the estate, but they did so slowly, carefully, taking one step at a time. They faced the challenges together. And through it all, Ava continued to grow stronger. She still had moments of sadness, moments when she missed her mother and wished things could be different. But she was learning to live with those feelings, not letting them define her. As they sat together one evening, Michael looked at Ava, his heart filled with pride. She had come so far, and he knew that she was finally on her way to healing. "You've done more than I could have ever imagined, Ava," he said softly. "I'm so proud of you." Ava smiled, her eyes shining with a newfound sense of peace. "Thanks, Michael," she said. "I'm proud of me too." And in that moment, Michael knew that they had both found something they had been searching for all along: healing, hope, and the strength to face whatever the future held. "Please take me home, sir." Little girl shivered in snow. Then a millionaire CEO found her, and, hello everyone. Before we continue today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's continue the story. It had been nearly a year since Ava had first come into Michael's life, and the transformation was nothing short of remarkable. The little girl who had once shivered in the snow, alone and frightened, now stood tall and strong, no longer defined by her past. Michael couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride as he watched her. She had grown into a confident young girl, filled with hope and determination. But even though the journey had been long and challenging, Michael knew that there would always be moments when Ava would struggle. Life wasn't about perfection. It was about finding a way to keep moving forward, no matter the obstacles. One afternoon, as they sat in the park together, Michael looked at Ava, who was sitting on the swing, her legs gently swaying back and forth. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the park, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. Michael took a deep breath and spoke softly. "Ava, do you ever wonder what the future holds?" Ava paused for a moment, her eyes focused on the horizon. Then she turned to him, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I used to be afraid of the future," she said quietly. "I didn't know what was going to happen, and I felt like I was always waiting for something bad to happen. But now, I'm not so scared anymore." Michael smiled, his heart swelling with love for her. "That's because you've come so far," he said gently. "You've learned to trust again, to believe in yourself and in the people who care about you. You've shown me, and everyone around you, what real strength looks like." Ava's face softened, and she looked down at her hands. "I still have a lot of fears," she admitted. "There are days when I still miss her. I don't think that will ever go away." Michael nodded, understanding. "It doesn't have to go away," he said softly. "But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. I'm here with you, and I always will be." Ava smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thanks, Michael," she said quietly. "I think I'm finally starting to understand what it means to have a family." Michael reached over, giving her a gentle hug. "You've always had a family, Ava," he said softly. "You've just needed to remember that you belong." As the days passed, Ava continued to grow and heal. She became more involved in school, joining extracurricular activities, and even making new friends. Michael watched with pride as she flourished, her confidence growing with each passing day. But there were still moments when the weight of her past would creep in, when she would feel like an outsider, unsure of where she truly belonged. Michael knew that healing wasn't a linear process. It came in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes overwhelming. But he also knew that with each wave, Ava was learning to swim, learning to navigate the waters of life. One evening, as they sat together on the couch, Michael looked over at Ava, who was curled up with her favorite book. The warmth of the room surrounded them, and the quiet comfort of their shared space filled the air. Michael cleared his throat, his voice soft as he spoke. Ava, I want you to know that no matter what happens, I'll always be proud of you. You've made it through so much, and you've become such an incredible person, and I'm lucky to be a part of your life. Ava looked up at him, her eyes shining with emotion. I'm lucky to have you too, Michael, she said quietly. You've made me feel safe, like I'm not alone anymore. Michael smiled, his heart full. That's because you're not alone. You're my family, and nothing will ever change that. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Michael and Ava continued to build their life together. They faced challenges. They celebrated victories. And through it all, their bond only grew stronger. Ava had learned that family wasn't just about blood. It was about love, trust, and the willingness to be there for each other. No matter the circumstances, she had learned that healing wasn't a destination, but a journey, one that she didn't have to walk alone. And Michael had learned that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is not just a home, but a place in your heart, a place where they can grow, heal, and find the love they deserve. As they sat together, side by side, watching the sunset, Michael realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives. They had faced the darkness together, and now they were walking toward the light, one step at a time. And no matter what the future held, they knew they would face it together, with love, strength, and the unbreakable bond of family.